Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Advice from a Call Center Geek, the call center and contact center podcast. We try to give you some actionable items, take back in your contact center, improve the overall quality, improve the agent experience. And what we're going to do today is try to really overhaul the customer experience. Let's try this again. I just tried this podcast about an hour ago, had some technical difficulties. So hopefully this one works a little bit better and I can get through it. Again, I know I'm coming on a little late, but we are live on TikTok. We're live on LinkedIn, X, and Facebook. So if anybody has any questions, please, throw them through and we'll try to get through those questions as well. But today's a little bit of a special episode. Excuse me. I'm pretty excited about it. This is kind of the precursor to the book that we're about to kind of send out into the world. And the book is called False Hustle, and we'll get into that in a second. But I don't want to spend too much time on kind of things that aren't important to you, that aren't going to really help you. But just to give you just quick background, we've been working for about the last year and a half, almost 2 years on our OttoQA platform, where we're looking to kind of reinvent how quality assurance is done in contact centers. And then again, we're a 600-seat contact center outsourcer as well. So we're working with a lot of different clients with a lot of different thought processes on how quality should be. And we've learned a lot, right? And again, I've been doing this for 25 plus years, but really in the last 2 years, every single day in and out, looking at quality forms from so many different verticals, from so many different companies, we started to see some themes, good and bad, that were kind of arising. So we wanted to write a book on everything that we've learned really over the last 2 years of doing OttoQA, and really the last 18, 15 months of when we've had customers and we've started to work internally and then with external customers, looking at literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different QA forms, doing thousands and thousands of evaluations. So these are some things that put a light bulb in our head. And I talked about false hustle probably about 3 years ago, maybe around COVID, maybe it's even been a little bit longer, but it's really evolved. So let's kind of jump right into this. I think, again, this is not for everyone. If you are looking to just kind of churn and burn and you have a kind of a cost first contact center, and no matter what I say here from a quality aspect, it's not going to really relate. This is for companies that really want to rethink how they do quality and how quality can be done on a whole different level. It's not going to be easy to do, but it's not going to be impossible. And there is a tiered approach to this, right? Looking not just at the QA form and what we score, but how do we educate agents? Or how do we get people to think differently? To the type of agent that we need, does that change and does that evolve? And I think it does. We are entering an age of AI if we're not already there. Right? AI is going to be taking a percentage or a portion of contact center agent work and our customer experience work. But what's left is the harder stuff, which we've talked about a ton. But the human personalization is also something that is lacking. And the companies that figure that out from an empathy standpoint, from a true call control standpoint, from actually entertaining and engaging with customers, not just looking at process, those are the companies that are going to succeed at a really high level. And this is for them, right? This is for those companies that say, I want to do customer experience. I want our quality to be the best. It's just not there, and I can't put my finger on it. And I think I have some answers for you. And hopefully that this will at least plant the seed of what I think a new kind of that technology first piece, right? And then that agent level here, what does that look like now moving forward? And hopefully this again plants the seeds that you can make some changes and start to really think about how quality should be done in your contact center. And hopefully I can give you a blueprint to do that. Again, the book is coming out. I keep saying the next week. Hopefully by next week, it should be out. But I want to kind of go through the first, I think, 3 chapters that I have here are the meat and potatoes of kind of what this is, what you would need to do, and kind of how we can evolve and the changes that we can make. All right, so let's kind of dive into this. False hustle is kind of a basketball terminology term that, again, one of the coaches that I really respect would always use kind of with some of his players. And again, to make this analogy as easy as possible, it's kind of like that, say that basketball player who's a boy or girl who's just starting out. Maybe they're in like 4th or 5th grade and they're trying so hard, right? They're sprinting, they're diving, they take the ball, maybe they run a couple steps. They're doing everything wrong, but they're playing as hard as they possibly can, and they think they're doing things the right way. When in reality, right, their skill level's not where it needs to be, and they're actually hurting the team. But, you know, again, so many of us are just stands, hey, good hustle, Janie, good hustle, Bobby, right? Because we're trying to be nice because they're little kids, but you kind of see that aspect of it. So I see this, and I thought it was just the perfect analogy for the contact center. How many of us are doing things on our call and on our calls that we think are the right thing to do, right? We have, you know, maybe somebody who's never really worked in customer experience, but they need to make their mark. So they create a new scoring system for QA. They change how we're going to educate, right? And most of the time, what we find is very process driven. There's nothing wrong with process. Process can get us where we need to be, right? But when we just talk about process and we forget about the human aspect of this, that's where we got some real issues. And that's where I think, you know, we kind of see these things kind of arise. So again, false hustle is things like, you know, just off the top of my head, and I'll get into some real examples I have in the book, but, you know, I still see companies that call engagement using the customer's name 3 times in the first 60 seconds of the call, right? Is that engagement? Saying thank you after every single piece, artificial thank yous after every piece of qualifying information or verification information that a customer gives. Saying that empathy is, I'm really sorry to hear that, right? With these monotone things we've said 400 times on every single call. And then checking the box and saying, great job, Janie, that was empathy. And you get points for that, when really it did absolutely nothing. So the main goal that I want you to start to think about is process is important. We have to have it, right? There has to be something for the agent to do. But process should start to shrink in how we're rewarding it. And we need to raise, right, our intent and our outcomes, right? That's what we should really be scoring. And when I get into this, there's not that much difference between, you know, the process and then the outcome, right? You can ask questions, you can educate a little bit differently that allows for human interaction, right? That totally evolves how we treat customers. And this is kind of the main thing that's, you know, kind of really been exciting me. So, you know, let's kind of get into some of the things again that we kind of talked about with false hustle, you know, looking at, you know, the agent or the rewarding of kind of just getting through call quotas, right? Again, if that's what you do, you're going to be annoyed with this whole thing. You just move on. But again, we have so many AHT, and again, you have to have KPIs. You have to have an average handle time that is within reason, right? But again, let's make sure that we understand that that's just one KPI and it shouldn't be the overall KPI, right? You know, looking for strict scripting policies. I totally get if there's a specific disclosure on a financial services call or a HIPAA or a health insurance call, we have to do that. But are we using scripting policies? And even they don't have to be scripted like word for word, but I get someone, hey, our calls aren't scripted, but you basically have to say these things, right? Maybe not word for word, but they're scripted policies that kind of strangle the natural flow of a conversation between a customer and an agent. And again, we're starting to try to differentiate between AI. That's not a good way to do it, right? Are you obsessed over kind of the checkbox metrics, right? And especially on your QA forms, right? Not looking at if what they did made the call better. And empathy is my favorite example of this, right? So many times customer has an issue and empathy is, I'm really sorry to hear that, Mrs. Smith. Boom, check, good. We got empathy on that call. There was no empathy on that call. There was words that were said. That's all it was. It wasn't real empathy, right? And again, not to get into the AI aspect, but the really cool thing now that we're starting to do, and when you come into getting rid of false hustle is, hey, look through the call, right? And let's score anytime that the customer had an issue. Did the agent respond in kind with something that actually helped move, you know, the call forward? Did the tone of the customer get better? Did the sentiment of the call get better? Right? We can start to measure these things now. And so in kind, we can start to educate our agents on doing these things as well. You know, how many times have you seen, you know, the IT department, we implement new technology. We think it's going to be great. We don't really consider how it impacts customer experience. That happens everywhere. False hustle, right? the training that is just so focused when we're in education, where to click, what to click, making sure that when we don't talk about actual problem solving skills, it's the number one issue in training right now, right? Is process and where on the screen and what drop down should I go to when we're not actually teaching how to have these conversations with agents that most of the time are texting anyway, right? It's a huge drop off. Again, a little bit of false hustle. Saying thank you, right, 10 times after every verification piece. I can't stand that. It's all fake, right? And again, we talked about kind of saying the customer's name within a certain period of time. Lots of different things in here, right? The main goal here, though, is the saying of things that aren't really important to calls, aren't really important to customers, but we're making our agents say them, even at the detriment and the annoyance, right, of our customers. And again, I think, there's a cost to this, right? There's cost with customer churn, right? We think that we're doing a great job getting everybody off in 3 minutes and, being as superficial as we can, but we're moving on to as many customers as we can. So our service levels are really high, right? We don't have people waiting. We think that that's what really makes people mad, is just waiting, right? We don't understand that it's actually the fixing of the problem that is the issue. Again, so I think with false hustle, you're getting more customer churn. You're getting employee burnout, right? You're trying to treat your agents like AI. You're trying to make them into a robot, right? They can't use a personality. They can't use a lot of the aspects that make them want to be in a customer service role in the beginning, right? We take that out and we give them process and we tell them, boom, check this, or beat it, right? So many missed opportunities, right? We are pigeonholed when you false hustle into scripting, into certain specific things, into what a customer could say. So you can't have that natural kind of even sales process where we're having a conversation, something can come up that we can kind of grab onto. There's millions of dollars in missed opportunities with false hustle. I think there's brand damage, especially those companies that are really acting in a scripted environment with a lot of KPI work, right? That is how we really judge calls. Check mark QA, all of that thing can really hurt. Ineffective problem solving, right? Again, how many times have you talked to your internet provider? You've told them that, hey, listen, I work in IT. I already rebooted my router. Everything is working in the room here, but it's not like you tell them these things that you've already done, and they say, okay, well, we're going to start with, can you please go and reboot your router? Like I already did this, right? Frustration. And again, I understand that there's customers that say things and we got to do the easiest stuff first. But I think we can be human enough to really recognize when somebody has been doing some things. We can actually see in our notes that maybe they've done this before, right? Ineffective problem solving when we're just checking boxes, we're not doing any extra work. And again, I think there's some compliance risks too, right? Making sure that we're not hitting everything that we can. So there's a huge opportunity here for those companies that want to kind of forego and kind of redefine, right? Redefine what their contact center could look like, and redefine how to kind of, I guess, break the cycle of this false hustle. So let's get into kind of, I don't want to get into kind of the type of agents, because in the book we talk about all the different types of agents, and I'm sure you guys can relate. Like we have the checkbox champion, right? That they tick all the boxes on the scorecard. It's kind of what we talked about. The empathy actor, right? The person who kind of just is that same fake empathy. I'm really sorry to hear that. Like all of these things, and we talk about that in the book. I don't think that is important now. I want to talk about how we can redefine, and what are some of the things that, again, first let's start with what promotes false hustle when we look at a scorecard, right? When we have overemphasis on our efficiency metrics, right? We have to have efficiency metrics, but when that's kind of the goal, right? False hustle is already tied into your process. Really tight scripting adherences and SOPs of what to do, when to do it. Again, we have to educate. We have to have our agents understand this, but that can really be to a detriment if you go too hard. Superficial courtesy checks are huge for me. Again, I hate that. The pleases and the thank yous. Lack of problem resolution scoring, right? We're so focused on, did the agent do this, do this, do this? A lot of times we forget, did it work, right? And looking at that, I think those are some things that we can kind of look at. And again, I think ignoring customer feedback. A lot of times we forget about that on our scorecards of what the customer is saying. We wait for kind of maybe surveys, but I think that's something that we can kind of add into. So what do we do? Like, how do we start to fix this? And a couple things from a high level, and then let's talk about actually like how could we evolve a QA form, and then maybe change how our agents ask or are scored, right? So the number one is personalization. I think not standardization. We have for the last, I don't know, 20 or 30 years been able to QA calls with a human being that, depending on the call time, the length of call, could probably only handle maybe 2 to 3 agents per week, right? Each agent would only be getting scored 2 to 3 times. We had to make our scorecards as simple as we possibly can so that there's not a lot of thinking and analytics, so that we could get through these things, make sure that we're at a relative level of quality and move on to the next call, right? That's been a huge issue of why I think we have such superficial scoring. And then because of that, it's kind of like teaching to the test, right? You teach to the test, and for our tests is our QA forms. And because they're so kind of superficial and we're trying to get through them with humans, we've really struggled to get deeper into kind of that human engagement, because an agent or a QA manager can't listen to 15 to 20-minute calls, right? Or be consistent on a 5-minute call of listening for specific things. They just want to be, all right, he said that, yes, check, we're good, move on. With AI now, things are evolving and things are changing. That gets into later in the book, but we don't have to do that anymore. So again, looking at some of the starting points to get rid of false hustle, and what are some of the things that the agent, we can involve in the agent, again, is personalization, not standardization, right? Customers don't care about our process. They care about the outcomes. So let's make sure that we're trying to work through that. I think empathy that matters is a huge one, right? Actually kind of acknowledging customers' frustrations, really understanding it, talking it through, talking it like a friend, right? Not easy to do, right? Everybody talks about this. There's a lot of things that we need to do, and we get that later in the book. I'm not going to get into today, that I think can help you get to that point, right? Problem solving over process, right? And a lot of people disagree with me on that, or say they're the same thing. But we're so process driven because, again, it's easy to check on a check sheet on a QA form that we forget the whole point of this is to solve the customer's problem, right? Again, are we understanding the core issues? Are we taking the appropriate actions, right? Are we not just asking them specific things and then, going to a sheet that says do this, right? When we've already done that. Looking at customer satisfaction and sentiment over script adherence. I think that's important. Efficiency with a purpose. Everybody, we want to have shorter calls. We get that. There's a cost for this. But at what point should first call resolution trump that, right? Would it be better to take 2 minutes, have that call be totally done? Or are you going to penalize that agent because they're over 5 minutes, right? And you want them, even if there's no first call resolution, that customer's going to call back because we call that being efficient. I think that's an issue. Looking at proactive problem solving, right? Starting to anticipate questions, right? Understanding that stuff and having that conversation, not just going through the motions, waiting for the customer. If the customer didn't say it, I'm moving on, right? Imagine if all of your agents did that. I mean, how would that shrink your call volume with people calling back, right? Because you're handling multiple things, even if it takes 3 or 4 more minutes. We can get to that point, right? And we're showing it here, even kind of what we're doing with some customers here at Expivia. And, I think looking at a lot of these things, from a really high level, it makes sense. It allows us to forget about churn. We're going to have our agents longer. We're going to have customers that aren't calling us back because we're being proactive. We're having that conversation. We're getting everything done on one, right? Those repeat calls are done. Your brand is going to blow up, right? Because people are going to talk about this because nobody's doing this stuff. I think, all the missed opportunities you have from a cross-sell, upsell, you can now take advantage of if you're actually having these more in-depth conversations with customers and going the opposite of what everybody says is the right way to do things, of kind of churn and burn, get off the phone. I think that's kind of the cool thing. All right, let's talk about the scorecard here. Let me pull this up because I think it's really, really, not to pat my own back, but I think really done well in the book. So again, as I get into this, we're looking for intent and outcome focused scoring. We're not looking at process-based scoring, right? Not to say that we can't have, did they read this disclosure verbatim? Yes, that's got to be done, right? But when we talk about certain things like, did the agent to have a scripted greeting? Now, granted, maybe you want to brand something, that's different. But for the most of us, we're just doing it so that it's easy to check mark that the agent said what they said at the greeting, right? But how about we don't do that? How about we say, instead of, hey, did they use, hi, my name is Tom, thank you for calling XYZ Bank. How about we say, did they have a greeting that was warm, that was friendly, that started the conversation off right? And again, I'm not saying you just tell your agents to do that. There's education, there's training that we can get into later, but that's where we want to get to, right? And that's the beginning of what makes me, and again, I bet you 50% of you guys will disagree with me on this. That's fine. But I think this is where, if you can get to this point, you're going to blow up AI, right? You're going to have customers that are going to want to talk to your agents while still utilizing kind of that self-service. So let's talk about questions, specific questions that I see on QA forms, and how can we evolve them, right, into what I'm going to call a genuine service approach. So we have a false hustle approach, then we have a kind of a genuine service approach, right? So our false hustle approach for empathy. Did the agent use an empathy statement like, I understand how you feel, or I'm really sorry to hear that, at least once or twice during the call? That's an actual physical question that I have seen on QA forms, right? And then how about our general service approach? How about we ask the question like this? Did the agent's empathy effectively address the customer's emotional need and influence the interaction positively? Should say positively. I'm going to put that in the book, right? So did the agent's empathy effectively address the customer's need and positively influence the interaction? So again, what are we looking for there? We're not just looking for, did they say something? We're looking for, did the outcome of the call get better? And I don't think that that's a huge jump, right? It's not like we're talking oranges and bananas here to those two questions. That's the stuff I'm talking about. We're really close. It's not that far away. But if we can start to understand and start to train and educate agents on that level, right, it's a whole different level of customer experience. And again, it's not that far away. So again, we focus on the outcome. We're looking for intent, right? We're avoiding these languages about having specific actions. We want that natural, authentic response. All right. What about I haven't put some examples in here, right? So a false hustle interaction. The customer says, I've been waiting. I've been without the internet for 3 days. This is absolutely ridiculous. And the agent says, I understand how you feel. I apologize for the inconvenience. That's what we hear all the time, right? That's kind of that's the general go-to. No customer really believes that that's true. And they're not really sorry. But what if it was like this? And again, we got to train, we got to educate, we got to get the tone right. But customer, I've been without the internet for 3 days. This is ridiculous. The agent, oh my gosh, 3 days. That's not okay. Man, what's been going on? Please let me know. I don't know. It just stopped working. No one seems to care. Agent, I do understand that that's frustrating. I get it. Let's try to figure this out. All right, walk me through and let's see what's happening here. Not that much different. 8 to 10 seconds different, but the whole interaction changed, right? We went from false hustle to, I understand how you feel. I apologize for the inconvenience. That's probably already ticking the customer off even more because that's just a canned response. But now I have an agent actually taking the time to listen, actively listen, right? Used 3 days, right? Which goes back to what that customer actually said, and had a conversation, calm the customer, and ask hey, let's get through this. That's a big difference. It's a big difference in the outcome. It's not a big difference in what we have to say, but we don't do this. Like it's crazy, right? Again, we're trying to teach agents to put themselves into the customer's shoes, really recognize kind of the real world impact, right? Validate those feelings and kind of move on, and try to get the conversation kind of moving on. So, I have so many more of these. Let me see if, let's look at call control, right? A lot of times for call control, like, did the agent adhere to the target handle time, right? And that's kind of how that's judged, right? Where general service, did the agent effectively use, the customer concerns while maintaining a natural conversation flow, right? We don't want agents going off and having 30-minute conversations about their day, right? We want the natural conversation flow, but we want that to kind of be within a proper conversation length, right? I think that, that's the kind of the big deal. When we talk about things like problem solving, right? Did the agent follow the you see this all the time. Did the agent follow the troubleshooting script in the correct order, right? That's kind of our false hustle approach. We're looking just on process, right? How about our general service approach? Did the agent apply critical thinking to identify the root cause of the issue and then provide a tailored solution based on the troubleshooting script? Right. So we give now the agent, right. And if you don't have these, if you're going, I don't want to say offshore, near shore, but if you have I think, outsourcing has done this a lot, right? Where we have to be really regimented because we're not sure what the agents are going to do. But if you have a really good internal contact center or really good USA outsourcer, you can ask these kind of things. So we can skip those first three things that we know the customer already did. We can get to the root cause. We can have a conversation with it. Right. And again, I'm not saying you don't give troubleshooting lists or scripts, but we have to give them the freedom to use them appropriately. Right. So we're not being scripted. We're not annoying the customer by think about this. Every single time that you go through a checklist, you're treating that customer like everybody else. That customer doesn't want to be treated like everybody else. That customer wants to be treated like themselves, like they're special. Right? That they're getting individualized treatment. So when you say, all right, Mrs. Smith, I know you've done those first three things. Let's jump to here. Again, tell me a little bit more, right? And you have that conversation with them. It's totally different, right? It's a totally different experience. I have so many more of these. I only want to do a 30-minute podcast here, but the book has about, 10 of these examples that we can really get into depth into a lot of the different. So again, to summarize this, and I don't know if I did a good job with this or not. The book I think is just so well done. I'm really proud of it. Once it comes out, please get a copy of it. But the paradigm shift that we're trying to do is move from process to intent and outcomes. Right? We want to do critical thinking over memorization. Right? And again, memorization. Even if you have agent assist, like things that are popping up, do this, I think it still gets on a script, right? We have to start to have empowerment and trust. Maybe it changes the type of agent that we have. And that's where I'm cool with AI taking that easy stuff. Let's get and pay our agents more. Let's get a different level of agent at a certain level, right? There's continuous learning that has to happen here. Looking at quality over quantity, really being customer centric and kind of adaptable. So again, this is the first 3 pages or 3 chapters of about a 15, 20-page book that we have talking about different techniques to deal with really irritated customers, not using false hustle, but using specialized techniques. How do we train and educate? What are some of the agents that we need to look for? How do we add technology into this? So hopefully when this comes out, you guys, I'd love to get some feedback. I'm going to try to send as many of these out for free as possible, just like I've done on the other books too. But thank you guys very much. Any questions on this, please let me know. DM me if you're interested in AutoQA, Expivia, any outsourcing or looking at our QA department as well. Thank you guys very much. And I'll talk to everybody soon.